When Lord Lugard is mentioned, most of us only remember one thing: the amalgamation of the Northern and Southern Protectorates to form what we now know as Nigeria. So we see Lugard as little more than an old racist colonialist who let his girlfriend hand us the singularly unimaginative name Nigeria. You know, where the niggas live. That's a bit like looking at Genghis Khan and remembering only the later version who had finally settled down on his throne. But hey, it's Nigerian history we're doing here, no digressions. If you care to dig a little deeper, like I do, you will discover a Lugard that we don't talk about, a bloody stone-cold killer who flattened kingdom after kingdom for the Queen of England and her Royal Niger Company. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Lugard the Conqueror, the first Baron of Abinja and the scourge of the Sokoto Caliphate. You see, in 1884, the great powers of Europe gathered in Berlin, Germany for what they called the Africa Conference. A conference that was attended by a total of 0 Africans. Your grandpapa no did there, my grandpapa no did there, but they call them Africa Conference. Okay. And what was the agenda? How to divide Africa into territories that they could own, control, and extract resources from without having to fight themselves for it. Part of their agreement was that each power had to demonstrate effective control over a territory before claiming it. That is to say, you must exact military and administrative control to own it. Na person papa land did they share like this, oh. Okay, back to our guy Lugard. Frederick John Daltrey Lugard was born on the 22nd of January 1858 to a military clergyman and a priest's daughter in Madras, India. He would later grow up to join the Queen's Royal Army and fight for her in India, Afghanistan, and East Africa. In the 1880s and 90s, he fought for the Imperial British East Africa Company and later the Royal Niger Company, blending commerce and conquest, normal levels for a British colonist. So after the Berlin Conference was finished, the British government knew they could not dull. They needed to move fast or they would be overtaken by the French and the Germans in the race to own Africa. It is this race that they now call the Scramble for Africa in your history class. Do we still even have history classes?
Yes, now which kind of question with that?
Okay, let's get back to the story. So they had drawn the lines in Berlin, and everybody and their uncle had to show walking for this our small Africa. The French had quickly captured the Emirate of Bogu and parts of the Kingdom of Dahomey that the British believed was their portion. Those territories had to be won back. Then in 1898, the British government set up the Niger Committee under William Palmer, the second Earl of Selborne and Under Secretary of State, to decide the future of the territory that later became Nigeria. So you all can stop cursing Lugard for trapping us in this Nigerian contraption. The real culprits were Lord Selborne, Sir Walter Egerton, Sir Ralph Moore, Reginald Atrobus, who probably masterminded the whole thing as the Assistant Under Secretary of State for the colonies, and Sir George Tubman Goldie, the man who created the Royal Niger Company. We'll need to talk about Goldie and his company one day. Anyways, Freddie Lugard was not in the building, but he was soon appointed governor of the Northern Protectorates, even before the Sokoto Caliphate had been conquered. You know, that's name it and claim it type of thing. And it was his job to achieve it. The Lagos colony by this time expanded to engulf Yoruba land from Eko in the south to Ilorin in the north, and the British were already making inroads into the Niger Delta, the Edo Empire and Igbo land. But to the north were the Hausa city-states ruled by Fulani overlords and their warlord-in-chief, the Sultan of Sokoto. You remember that same slave trade excuse they gave in Lagos? They gave the same excuse again. Fulani raiders had been responsible for enslaving unnumbered thousands and perhaps millions of people. So Lugard wrote to the Sultan demanding an end to the raids. The Sultan didn't mince words in his reply. He wrote, "From us to you, I do not consent that anyone from you should ever dwell with us. I will never agree with you. I will have nothing ever to do with you. Between us and you, there are no dealings except between Muslims and unbelievers. War, as Almighty Allah has enjoined on us." In 1902, Lugard rounded up a fighting force of 1,000 fighting men and 40 British officers and went forth to conquer. He was of course outnumbered, but while his opponents had muskets and swords and superior numbers, he had the Maxim gun, a machine of death that could spit out 600 rounds a minute. First, he quickly subdued the Abuja area, and very quickly Bida. Kotangora and Borgu fell. Then Muri, Bassa, and Bauchi. In early 1903, with the Middle Belt firmly in his hands, Lugard turned his eyes towards Hausa land and took Zaria first before looking north towards the ancient city of Kano with its strong walls. Kano was the jewel of the Caliphate, a trans-Saharan trade hub with a thriving textile industry and probably the largest market in the southern Sahel. He sent his right hand, Colonel Morland, with the best part of his forces and 2 Maxim guns. Kano shut its gates. Lugard and Morland shelled it until they breached the Gidan Kabuga gates and took the city. Lugard slaughtered 200 men over the next few days because it was good for morale. And after laying down the law, he struck out again towards Arugungu. The Emir of Gwandu saw him coming and withdrew, joining forces with Sultan Atahiru I in the north to await Lugard on the Sokoto plains. When Lugard came within the sight of Sokoto, the Caliph was waiting on the plain with 15,000 horsemen and 3,000 footmen. Lugard's Maxim guns shredded Atahiru's cavalry charge and the Sultan fled to the east, surrendering Sokoto to the British. Lugard pursued the Sultan all the way to Bormi in the Bauchi district and slaughtered him in battle on the banks of the Gongola River. The Caliphate had become part of the British Empire. The ancient empire of Kanem Bonu didn't even put up a fight. The Shehu came out to meet Lugard on horseback and asked him, "Will you force me to do anything against Islam?" When Lugard assured him he was free to maintain his religion, he swore allegiance to the British crown. So within the space of about a year, Lugard had taken a map drawn in Berlin in 1886 and turned it into a blood-soaked reality, welding the Fulani Emirates, the Empire of Bonu, and the mighty Jukun, among others, into modern-day northern Nigeria. Later, he would preside over the amalgamation of the Northern and Southern Protectorates to form Nigeria in 1914. But it was a plan hatched by the Selborne Committee and executed in fire and blood.